be hard to follow.
Yes. That was very good. I wanted to introduce you. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to the student constructors for hosting this meeting. It allows us to get everyone together at a good time and bring in some guest lecturers. This is also thank you for that we need to thank and acknowledge the Mississippi State Board of Contractors who supports our program every year, and we are dedicating a certain amount of resources to bring in experts to tell you all what's going on in the industry, what's new, and it's an extremely valuable resource. I remembered when I was in school is listening to guest lectures, going to them, because it broadens your horizon, and none of us knows everything, so the more you hear, the more you do, the more you get exposed to, the more work, the better you are. It's just that simple. So I also wanted to thank student constructors and their sponsor, Jessica Hardy, for pulling this together. And then I want to thank last and most of all, or at least whatever, that's the way, is Gregory Starzyk for coming on our invitation to be the Craft of the Construction Lecture Series number 2. We're going to try to do this every year, and this is the first year we did it. And we stayed on the theme of design build, which is really, if you look at it, if you took the best of both programs, architectural program, the construction program, and sort of see how those two things can work together. Design build is a new and emerging model. It's been around for a while, but the reason we asked Gregory to come is that they started this thinking at Cal Poly, and he was a colleague of one of the founders of it. He's a DBI associate himself. You should know his background. He starts off, he's a journeyman carpenter. He's a civil engineer. He's a project manager, and he's a lawyer, and then he's also a teacher. Tenured professor at Cal Poly in the School of Construction Management. So also we have in our presence the ASC Educator of the Year. He's nominated this year, so that's who is presenting today. Gregory is also a friend of mine. We both were at East Carolina. He likes sailboats, has a Harley, and he's an avid runner. So he runs the marathon. So if anybody can do that, you know they're a go-getter. So Gregory, thank you for coming, and here's your microphone.
Thank you very much for that nice introduction. And thank you all for sharing your lunch with me. It's actually my favorite time of day, and it smells real good. So I have a picture here behind me. This is San Luis Obispo, California, where I have been teaching for the last 8 years. Beautiful place. We don't have very much rain there, so thank you so much. Jessica, did you arrange the rain for this morning? The weather there on the coast of California is dry, and so we don't get thunderstorms very often. I'm from Chicago originally, and I have plenty of rain and terrible weather this time of year sometimes. But in California for the last 8 years, I haven't heard very many thunder boomers, so I heard them this morning. I thought, oh, that's nice. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Cannell, for the nice invitation. And thank you. Brad, is it?
Brandon, yes, sir.
Brandon, thank you for the nice introduction. This is my introduction. There is the Construction Innovation Center at Cal Poly, offices and classroom space and laboratories in that fairly new building that we have on the campus. And yes, over there, we spend a lot of time talking about the design build, integrated project delivery, but we also talk about construction management at risk, multi-prime contracting, construction management agency, all different forms of project delivery. This slide, I do borrow slides occasionally. There's quite a few borrowed slides in this presentation today, but this is from the DBIA Fundamentals course. And this slide talks about the game that we're familiar with, the game that I played for years. And it's been, I think I've been in construction industry about 150 years at last count. And it's an adversarial game. There's your part and there's our part. If I'm a contractor, I'll do budget, I'll do schedule. Your part is make sure that the building performs and there's adequate quality. And there's a sharp line drawn between those two disciplines. Okay, we're all familiar with this. John, we talked about this some this morning. Is it something I did? Okay. Here's a new game. Notice that red line is gone. All of these things come together. It's called design build. And that's it, right? That's all we have to do. Let's just all work together happily ever after. All right. Let's talk about the project, though. And you've all seen this. I know it's a little small. It's small for a reason. That's a little, diagram of showing a construction management at risk type of project. You got an owner in the little gray box. You've got a construction manager who is advising the owner early on. Eventually, they turn that advice into a guaranteed maximum price, and then the CM transforms itself into a general contractor. And all along, there's an architect also on contract with the owner, architect taking care of the design. Okay? So we use these diagrams in academia to simplify, but sometimes I feel that maybe as students, that's all we see, these simple diagrams, and we don't want to get deluded into thinking that projects are actually quite that simple. So we have a few people who are helping the architect, right? Acoustical consultant, roofing, kitchens, structural, cost, security. How many of these consultants do you suppose would be needed to design this building that you're in here right now? I saw the eyebrows go up. Do you have an idea? How many of those do you think? Half of those?
Probably not.
More than half. You seemed very definite about that, right? Probably. Oh, you did? Tell me about that.
Well, because you have to have everybody working together to build a project. You have the visual, audio visual, which
Yeah.
would be the
We have an electrical engineer who can get the lights right, I gotta call that person up, yeah. Yeah, you have all of that here.
the structural engineer with the beams and the columns. And
Yep.
so you need all of them to help out.
Did you have a, oh, no, that wasn't a question. No, you're exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. You have all of those. We have few people working for a construction manager, do we not? Few people. Same question for this side of the room here, being silent, but they haven't escaped me. What do you think, Brandon? Have some of these people involved in constructing this building? How many do we have there, you think? A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. Who do all of these people, this is kind of a hierarchy diagram. Who do all of these people report to? Who said contractor? Did you see? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that said contractor. They all have subcontracts with the contractor, do they not? And how many you need depends on the complexity of the building. Oops. Manufacturers and suppliers. Do they not augur into this equation? Did you know that half of the drawings, half of the construction documents are thrown away during construction? University of Texas did a study. They looked at the drawing work, and half of the drawings are thrown away, and they substitute those drawings with what is actually used during construction. Now, where do you suppose they get what's actually being used? Yeah, the manufacturers and suppliers. Design companies aren't investing money in research. Contractors aren't investing money in research. Manufacturers and suppliers are investing money in research. They have patented technology. They have trade secrets to protect. And it takes an army of those people to build a project. Oh, the owner's not an owner, is it? Investment committee, regional manager, senior project director, risk manager, property manager, building engineer. The owner is a team of people. Oh, let me ask you another question over here. This team of people that represents the owner, do they all agree all the time? No. Smart group. Yes, hardly. You got executive management at a company. Oh, you would have the chancellor of the university system over here who has something to say, and the Division of State Architect probably has something to say about the design of this building. Okay. Construction financing, is there? There's a capital stack of equity and debt that is necessary for constructing this building, and they're probably dictating performance and payment bonds on this building. Long-term financing in the way of a mortgage. The tenants of the building, we don't have tenants if you had a residential building or if you had a commercial building where there would be tenant improvements in there, you certainly have a tenants group. But you certainly have the users of this. I think the construction management department, if they were designing this building, would want to have something to say about how this was built, how big the rooms are. Sure. Permitting, regulation, and entitlement. Some of that. Tenant groups. Interiors, architects, a couple of those. You might have a dispute. The owner, architect, construction manager, GC, have a dispute. Each one of them would have their team of lawyers, and oops, I joined her. We involve everybody in the case. So, here's your simple project, okay? So, what are we doing in design build? We're saying, we've got a new game. It's not an adversarial game. We're going to cooperate. How do you think that that's going to go? I don't know either.
Not smooth.
Huh? Not smooth?
Not smooth.
Not smooth. Yeah, most of the time, not too smoothly. Sometimes it goes well. That's why we're looking for different ways of organizing. Construction, when you think about it, is like the movie industry. If you watch a feature-length film, and at the end of the film, there's going to be a list of credits, right? All of those people involved. And what else is similar is that the people who come together to do a movie may not ever work together again in their entire career. They come together for one project, they build a huge business organization, they spend millions of dollars and maybe years of time, they build a project, and then they disband. Let's think about construction. An army of people come together, build a large business organization, they build something that costs millions of dollars, and then they disband. Yeah? Very similar. So by the way, this brilliant graphic, I think, was by Chuck Thompson. He's a fellow in the American Institute of Architects and also a fellow in the Construction Managers Association of America. Presented this at Harvard University. I think it's a brilliant graphic, and I want to thank him for allowing me to use this. And he's got a very good book if you're interested in further reading about program management. CMAA sells that book. Here's what I want to talk to you today. Okay? Because if we're going to have design build, if we're going to have other alternative forms of project delivery, and it's a new game that's not an adversarial game, one ingredient that you need is this one here that I'm pointing to called trust. Okay? So let me ask you about that. How many students in this room would like to take this deal? Okay? I'll decide, based on your record here, whether you graduate or not. How many want to take me up on that?
What do you mean by record?
A negotiator, I think.
I might take you up on that.
You might take me up on that offer, right?
Great.
I want you to work on my team. Very trusting soul. I've been in this position, though, because if you're in that box that says the CMGC and you're the project manager, you've got an army of people. And you're expecting these people to trust your judgment. And it's a lot to ask for. It's not just a diploma that's at stake, careers are at stake. Our companies can fail. Do subcontractors fail occasionally? Your general contractors go out of business, yeah, that happens. And so you're asking a lot, right? So I want to talk about how do you get to trust, okay? So I put together this diagram. I call it the collaborative dance. Only 3 steps in the collaborative dance. And I got this idea from the world of joint venture partnerships in industry. We have an international economy, and our companies in the U.S. have partnered in various ways with other companies around the world. And these partnerships are largely founded on trust. And they've learned certain lessons, and they've learned that there are these 3 stages, and they call them formation, implementation, and evolution. And in those 3 stages, you can characterize them by 3 behaviors. One is a cooperative behavior, then a collaborative behavior, and then a trusting behavior. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the nature of those behaviors. So in formation, we establish contracts. You saw the diagram, all of those subcontracts, with the subconsultants and consultants and those upward contracts with the owner. All of those are formed. There may be teaming agreements. Anybody familiar with the term teaming agreement and what that is? Teaming agreement is words that are captured on paper that explain between people or companies how they're going to work together. These are generally not legally binding or enforceable agreements, but it does express how we want to work together. Maybe you have formed a team in class. You could write down the rules. We all agree that we'll be here on certain days. We all agree that we'll meet between 6 and 9, and we all agree that this person is going to be the mediator should we ever get in an argument. That's a teaming agreement. It's not enforceable in law, but it helps people understand how to work together. Non-disclosure agreements. Remember that army of manufacturers and suppliers and specialty contractors? They have things that they want to protect. That intellectual property may involve trade secrets. And the problem with a trade secret is that once it's out there, it can't be taken back. So they want to prevent people from disclosing things that are important to the profitability of their business. So they'll say, we'll sign this non-disclosure agreement. They are enforceable in law and prescribes for remedies in the event that somebody breaches a trade secret. And we've all talked about BIM. When you have got a complex project, there may be a number of different parties who are all creating parts of the BIM model. And what you want to do ordinarily is create what they call a federation of companies, each with their own section of the model and rules about how the model is put together, how do we handle revisions, what happens if there's an error in there, who would have accountability for those errors, where the liabilities apply. So the BIM describes that. And then there are often informal rules. You have a meeting at the beginning of the project, and you come to some understandings. Well, look, on this project, we're all going to be in a big room together, and we're going to have the key participants from each of these companies that are going to be working in this room together for the length of the project. You may have those sort of rules, and other rules that didn't involve co-locating on site. Okay, so that's formation stage. Formation stage is where cooperation exists, and here's how you can think about it. As long as what you do doesn't interfere with what I'm doing, it's okay. How many of you have come across that working with a team? Especially at the beginning? Yeah? You wanted to say something, I saw it.
No, I said that's.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so here's the sort of behaviors that you get, right? Does that look familiar to you? Who wants to stand up and say, that's wrong, do it differently, right when that team is formed? No, you don't want to do that. You don't want to be the jerk. No, I'm trying to get along, right? If there's a problem that comes up, I want to avoid it. Right? That's normal. That's normal human behavior to kind of avoid these things. So, and what do I mean by, well, conflict avoidance. You may think differently about things, but you don't want to talk about it. Okay? You may have stuff that you know that's important. You're not really inclined to give it out. Particularly if, okay, it's a trade secret that I have, and I know they signed a non-disclosure agreement, but I don't trust them. right? So I'm not talking. Or maybe they're going to do something that's going to result in my company getting a little more work, more profitability. I don't want to say too much, okay? And you kind of create your own pecking order. Do you do that in the teams that you form? Somebody sort of takes the lead, someone else gets to do all the work. Someone else mostly sleeps. What's that? I wish I had heard that. It sounded like it was funny. We move on to implementation. This is the second stage. Okay? Am I missing something here? No? Okay, implementation. So here you start finding out. So maybe you've been working together for a few weeks, and maybe you start to, maybe if it's a student team, maybe you've been, working together for a couple of class sessions, and you start to find out who can do what. This person is good at talking in public, the other one is a very good writer, someone else is a whiz at scheduling, somebody else is, the BIM genius. And you sort of figure that out, and then you start to develop some expectations. Somebody is always late. They do good work, but they're always late, so don't worry about it. Someone else can never figure out when they're supposed to show up. Right? Someone else talks too loud. You get sort of these expectations about what people are going to do. In a business environment, you start talking about trade secrets. Non-disclosure agreements in place. Here's things that you want to know. Anybody notice the difference in culture between design and construction? Yeah, a lot of heads going up. On which side of the pendulum are you? Design or construction?
I'm architecture, but I've worked in construction.
I see. Could you define architectural culture?
I definitely think it's a lot more businessy, a lot more artistic,
Mm-hmm.
and then the construction's a little bit more like.
Can you repeat what you said?
Yeah, she's saying it's a little bit more artistic, more
Business.
formal, business-like, and
Office.
in the office. So do the architects work long hours?
I'm assuming I've never worked under one.
Never worked under one. It's been my experience with. They say if you go to a university campus, if you want to find the architecture department, go at night. It'll be the place where the lights are on. Are the construction managers on site at night in the university? No? No, of course not. That's,
Here, I think I live up here.
oh, you
A
do?
little bed up there.
You're doing something right. Doing something right. You go to Cal Poly, they might be in the bars at night, but I don't think that they're in the laboratory.
There's always time to stop by and borrow the way home.
I see. Now we're on the same page. Depends whether or not it's finals or not. But you do have this, the thing I notice about construction managers, I don't know, maybe we teach it to them. I hate to think that we actually do that, change the way people behave. But, you give a job to you got architects and a construction manager, and you give them the job, and, the construction managers say, okay, when I get all the elements on, they start writing a plan, they say, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to do that, we're going to be finished in 3 hours. Okay, get to it, I want to get done. Sound familiar? I'm stereotyping a little bit. If I say to the designer, here's the project, they said, oh, let's think about this. What could we do? We could really get our imagination going on this. We got to be done in 3 hours. Now, we won't even start in 3 hours. We're going to be here at night with the lights on, right? But you know what? That's how design gets good. The more time you spend on the design, the better it gets. And that's what they're after, quality in design. So don't think like a construction manager if you're working with an architect. It's a different culture, but it's that for a reason. For a reason, right? Besides, if I'm a constructor and I'm building something, I have to pay general requirements every day that I'm mobilized on site. The clock is ticking and the money is being spent every day that you're on site. In the architecture office, there's no field conditions. I can do it today, I can work an hour tomorrow, I can work an hour next week, it's still 3 hours. Right? So it's different. It's different. Personalities, values. you start to understand these things in implementation. So, justify your reasons for doing it, and I'll do it. That's when you know you're starting to have a collaboration. The key thing here is that with collaboration, people start to understand what somebody's interests are. I understand why the architect is there at night and wants to rework the design over and over. It's to get it better. I understand that. I may not agree with that. I may not do the same thing myself, but I understand it. And the architect might start to understand, why is the construction manager always in a hurry? Right? Because things have to be done. We've got an obligation, a duty to get things done. Right? We're builders. They start to understand these things. They don't necessarily change their behaviors. So what you start to see is opinions. Well, ideas get expressed, and then people start to challenge what they're hearing. It's actually a good thing, because there are going to be differences, and you have to address those differences. You do it in a respectful way, and it's very productive. You know, new things are learned this way. And we're starting to find out, as I mentioned, what the interests are, and the hierarchy, instead of somebody being in charge and someone else is taking orders, it starts to level out, where people starting to look at each other as having similar responsibilities and duties, okay? And then you get to the final stage of evolution, and over here, you're starting to allow people to work separately because you know that what their interests are and what it is that you're trying to achieve and why they're doing it. You've established some informal lines of authority, so you are clear on how decisions are going to be made, and manager partners and worker partners form. What I'm talking about is this, and this is sometimes overlooked. There's people who do work, and then there's the managers of their company, right? The managers are a team that's separate and distinct from the workers who are doing the work of design. The executive managers of the companies have to find trust as well as the people working. Sometimes companies will come together and they will build a project and it will go very well. Trust forms, they work very cohesively, and then those companies will engage in a second project and it goes terribly. And the reason is they've got different people working on the project. Well, people are a non-fungible commodity. A fungible commodity is something that you can break down like money. I can break it down from $1 million to $100,000 to $10 or a penny. Every piece is the same, but people aren't like that. So you take different people from the same company, put them on another project that doesn't necessarily work well together. Okay? So partnerships have to be formed at levels. Trust forms when somebody says, I'll do it because you want me to. If it's important to you, I'll do it. Is that trusting? No. That's the new game. So we see dialogue start to arise. In the early stages of team formation, there tends to be argument. One person has a point of view, someone else has another point of view. In the latter stages, as the teams mature, what you start to discover is people can discuss a problem, look at it from different perspectives. And through dialogue and conversation, they can find a mutually satisfactory solution to those problems. They get to understand people's positions, and knowledge integrates. I remember when I first started in the trades, we had 3 different types of glass. There was single strength glass, there was double strength glass, and there was insulated glass. I guess you had plate glass as well. That was it. Today, if you want to specify glass, you could do a whole 4-year undergraduate degree on glass alone. There are hundreds of different possibilities there. And it's not possible anymore. No longer can one person make all of the decisions, because no person has all of the understanding that's necessary to put a project together. It's too complex. So in order to successfully bring a project forward, the knowledge of different individuals has to integrate together. I don't know if I'm running out of time, but I forgot what I'm going through. I had just another story that occurred to me. It was a good friend of mine for years. Actually, was my boss at first, and then became a mentor. But I go see him and his wife, and we meet in Santa Cruz for the last 5 or 6 years, once a year. His son, I was working for Intel, and now works for Google. But he was one of the gurus at Intel, real bright kid Larry had. And I said over some drinks one night, I said, "Oh, you're one of them." He says, "What does that mean?" I said, "Well, when they say, what are they doing, with the chip? You're one of the people who understand what's going on in those microchips." He says, "No, I don't." He says, "Well, who does?" He says, "Nobody does." I said, "Well, that's crazy. Maybe it's because we're drinking that you're saying that." He says, "No, nobody does." He explained it. He says, "We have 5 different groups. I don't recall what they are, but one of them has the system architecture. The other is maybe programming, and there's manufacturing, and then there's materials." And he says that it would be a lifetime to understand any one of those areas. Nobody knows how the whole thing works. But how do you get it to work? He says, "Well, you manage the interfaces. This goes in, that comes out. And I know my world, I don't know your world. And nobody ever attempts to." I said, "Well, that's brilliant, because that's the way building is getting to be. You can't know all of it. You have to integrate your knowledge somehow. Look at those interfaces. How does the knowledge transfer?" And you have to depend on the expertise and trust in the expertise of others. So, what do we get from all of this? Okay? At the beginning of the project, create some structure. Set down the contractual requirements, set down teaming agreements, and set down some informal structures. Set expectations, fulfill your promises. This builds trust, where people can predict your behavior. Minimize personnel turnover. People are not, fungible quantities. Once a person gets assigned to the project, they want to stay with the project. And I'll talk about that maybe a little bit more. But the final thing is to seek long-term partners. Well, when I started out this exercise, I said the construction industry is like the movie industry, and that all of these people come together for one project, and you build it, and then they disappear. If every construction project involved assembling a unique team of people, what are the likelihood that every construction project is going to run well, based on what we know about trust? Pretty low, pretty low. What benefit do you get from design build?
More of the same people on each job.
Yeah, a design build company combines the designers and the constructors. And I don't, all of the study that I have done, I've talked to John and he's done this sort of study. Many of the others have studied teaming. I don't know any way of predicting the people that you can put together and that they'll work well together. I don't know any way of predicting that. But I do know this, when you find the ones that do, you want to keep them doing it, right? So when you get a good team, keep it assembled, and design build can do that, okay? And it's an unheralded strength of design build. And design bid build tends not to do that, okay? And in a complex world, it's inconceivable that you can try to put a complex project together without trust between partners. You can't share knowledge, okay? So, those are my takeaways. That's the end of the presentation. Thank you very much. I hope I'm on time. I hope you have some questions for me. It could be a question about anything. Why do you have so many consonants in your name? Or anything. It's a Polish word. It would be pronounced Starzyk in Polish. And it roughly translates into grandson of the old man. It's taken me a lifetime to live into my name, but I think I'm getting there. Thank you. Besides, they like, I don't know, in Poland they like consonants.
Questions?
I know you're overwhelmed.
Could you tell us a little bit about how you moved from law to construction to architecture and how these things affect you?
Oh, thank you. How did I move from law to architecture, construction, and all of these things?
Maybe I said them in the wrong order.
Yeah, well, I don't want to tell my life history because I'm old and that's what takes along by definition. But let's talk about law. this is a lesson that I say to my students. I said, if I was designing a building and I wanted the temperature and humidity in that building to be absolutely perfect at every inch of that building, 24 hours a day, and if I had enough money to throw at the problem, I could find somebody to design a system that will deliver that. Okay? That's easy. Now I want to design a building where the people who work in the building love the building and they will cooperate with each other. Okay? Who am I going to hire to do that? I don't know how to do that. I just don't know how to do that. And, I started out an engineer, and I found that, engineers are really good at solving problems, but they're picky. I'll say, I'll solve the HVAC problem, I won't solve the relationship problem. That's not my area. So they're very picky about the problem. Okay? But very frequently, people don't get along together, and this leads to disputes, and sometimes those disputes end up in the court. And when they end up in the court system, the court doesn't have the privilege of saying, I can't solve that problem. They don't. No matter how intractable the problem is, the court has a duty to solve that problem. Okay? And it just so happens that which problem is more important? Keeping the temperature in the building right or keeping the relationships right? Relationships is a lot more important. So the important problems end up in the court systems. Right? So if you want to know what's important about your industry, you have to look to the court system. They're the only ones who are trying to solve that problem. And the problems evolve from the relationships that we form. So I see the law as being a way to organize the relationships between the parties that deliver these complex projects. And that's the only place where it's being done.
So as we see buildings evolving, the order requirements evolving, more performance-based criteria rather than prescriptive requirements for technologies and strategies. Where would you see in a global environment an ideal project delivery? Because on one hand, you have a design builder who will be working together and might not get the building its potential. On the other hand, you might have an adversarial relationship, but get checks and balances and try to push them.
Excellent question, Sandeep. Leave it to a professor to ask the tough question, but I'm going to handle that one for you. So we have an evolving place where owners are looking for performance specifications. I actually worked in a process industry where we had performance guarantees on our project. And now we're looking at an environment, and what he's talking about, performance-based systems. It's that perhaps what you're paid for the building is going to be judged by how well the building performs. Let's say its energy performance over time. If you're able to meet a certain dollar, if you have certain efficiency in energy, then that determines how much you're being paid. So a performance-based project. What sort of project system helps to deliver performance? That's something new, right? Because even in design build, we get to a substantial completion, final completion, we're out of there. I don't worry about what's going on later. There's actually been there is an answer to this question. There's been a subtle revolution in the building industry, and it's not widely recognized. And that is that most owners have turned into serial buildings. The day where people come together for a unique structure is actually in the past. I know we still think, and are particularly in architecture, that we're building unique structures. But if you look closely, there's a lot of systems that are being replicated. So think about this. If in the past, if you wanted to open up a store of some sort of a retail store, a clothing store, you might hire an architect, buy a piece of land, put the building up, start the store. Today, you don't do that. You call a developer, and you lease space, and you do some TI, and you move into that space. The developer is a serial builder. They built over and over and over and over again. What happens when you do something twice? It gets better. When you do it 3 times, it gets even better. 4 times, 5 times. The more you do it, the more refined it gets. So we're seeing program management stepping in to not build identical buildings. Nobody wants to build identical buildings, but sometimes I describe it as kind of like a Lego set. So, somebody's created the blocks. Here's a whole stack of them. Make something out of it. But the elements themselves are, repetitive, either because of the people that are doing it, or the processes that they use, or the products that they buy. Okay? Yeah.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah.
What is the biggest challenge that you all have confronted at Cal Poly as far as doing this integrated project education that's mimicking design build?
Thank you. Excellent question. What's the biggest challenge that we have come across at Cal Poly in doing integrated education? It's been faculty willing to do it. Faculty willing to do it.
What's the biggest benefit?
Okay, don't be cynical, Greg. The biggest benefit for doing interdisciplinary work in university, I think, is that it delivers the promise of providing an education that is useful. See, one of the things that drives and motivates me is I've been around a long time, but I realize that one thing is for sure, that the building industry of the future is not going to be the one that I learned and experienced in the past. I know with certainty that the industry of the future is going to be different. Okay? So how do I teach a future that I haven't, and none of us have yet experienced? I don't know the answer to that question. But you can surmise, as this complexity increases, as there's more requirements for performance, based buildings, that there's going to have to be more cooperation and trust between partners, and integrated project delivery is a way of teaching students to work in that trusting environment. So I think the biggest benefit of that is that it fulfills the promise of teaching for the future. Yeah.
In Dr. Cindy's class earlier, me and Brennan were talking about design build versus design bid build in like the public sector. How do you see that happening in the future? Like, I mean, because there are certain aspects of design bid build that are kind of essential to the public aspect, but then again, design build has its own unique characteristics that have a great plus to it too. So how do you see that going on in the future?
I took my coat off because questions are getting tougher. I'm starting to feel the heat. That's a great question. What do we see in the future for design build and design bid build, particularly in the public sector, you're saying? Here in Mississippi, and I looked this up before I came here, design build can be done for public projects, but only if the legislature designates that project and authorizes, design build for that project. And they have to show a public benefit. So they have to do a comparative analysis. Here's a design bid build project. Here's a design build project. The design build project will demonstrate cost savings, time savings. The design build project is a sufficient size and type to warrant design build. And with that legislative authorization, then you can do design build projects. Okay. In private contracting, there's no such obstruction. Private owners can do whatever they want,
Well,
within reason. And
so like if you were
I'm talking like a lawyer, and it would have to be lawful too, but
yeah,
details.
but like if you were trying to go to the state of Mississippi and be like, look, this is the reason why we should allow design build to be used more in the public side of things, what would be your argument for it? Just out of curiosity.
My argument was for better performance on buildings and better integration of technologies. And so with design build, you have a proven method, as we were talking about here, of taking people who are familiar with working together and they can deliver a powerful project. And we can use our past experience, repeat that and deliver a project at better cost, time than others could. And I don't want to focus too much on this, but this is another lecture. But we're thinking about constructors. Most of you, I think, over here are constructors, and constructors have a tendency of thinking about three things. It's the Holy Trinity, I guess. It would be cost, schedule, quality, right? There was an old joke about somebody came to the auto shop, and there was a sign over there that said cost, schedule, quality, pick two. Right? But cost, schedule, quality in the new world is nonsense. Nonsense. Because what's missing is purpose. Why are you building this? Okay. I build a highway for the public. I'm going to do design build to design and build that highway. What's the purpose of the government building that highway? If you can find out what the purpose is, then you can deliver a project at a suitable cost with an adequate schedule and sufficient quality. But if the project doesn't fit the purpose, then at any price, it's useless. And design build has a way of diving into the purpose of the building, because that's what design is all about. You integrate that with construction, and now your thoughts are larger. You're more likely to do what the owner actually requires. It's not just about cost and schedule.
Can I share your presentation with the design build class? Because that answers that question very explicitly. That little presentation you made for the seminar course?
Oh, yeah.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
Yes, he answered that question with some really good diagrams, and I think it would help you understand that. I think we have time for one more question, because there's a class here.
You want those up now, or?
Oh, he's
Yeah.
in charge.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
right.
so
Good
if
guy.
you keep the same team in design build, like you were talking about,
Yeah.
wouldn't it make your scope of work more defined and based on the capabilities of that team?
Yeah, you would want to fit the team to the scope of work, and I think I see where you're going here, even though you didn't say it. What you're going at is the scope of work is different from project to project.
Right.
Yeah, and so no doubt you have to augment the team or modify it a little bit from job to job. Yeah, those are practical realities.
But then when you do that, you don't have the same team.
It's exactly right. No, you're exactly right. That's one of the challenges in doing this.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
But what we're saying, we're not talking about absolutes over here. We're saying we're pushing it in this direction
Right.
of trying to maintain, the integrity of the core of the team, and you bring people in to, to supplement that from time to
Right.
time. Yeah. But you're right, it's a challenge.
I wouldn't mind asking one more question, and then we'll wrap it up, since I think we've reached the time limit. What is, at Cal Poly, what are the students' perceptions of the design build industry as opposed to design bid build? Do they really understand the benefit? Yes, I want to go to work for a design build firm, or is the traditional design bid build still lean towards?
Oh, that's an excellent question. What is the student's perception of the benefit of design build? And I guess that requires making some sort of a, judgment on what all of our students thinking, and of course, there's differences in thought. I believe that in California, students are very receptive to design build, maybe too much so. I find myself being and teaching project delivery methodologies in an agnostic way. And that would mean to say that design build is not the answer for every project. Construction management risk might be a better answer. And so what I try to do at Cal Poly is to instill the critical thinking skills in the students so that they're able to look at particular circumstances like you just did. Say, okay, we did design build the last project, but this team is going to involve different people. What would make sense given that piece of information? So it's like having a lot of different instruments, or having a lot of different keys to play in. You don't have to do the same thing all the time. Yeah, very good question. I think the students at Cal Poly, though, generally they're open, very open to design build. And most of the contractors in California report that they haven't done a hard bid in years now. That most everything is done negotiated bid. Most everything involves early involvement of the contractor. And they're struggling to find people that would fit in that sort of collaborative environment. And it's almost to the point where I think students sometimes take it for granted that everything is going to be design build, and I say, wait a minute, it's not necessarily. Not necessarily. Yeah.
Anybody have any other questions?
Thank you for excellent questions and for your time.